Hey there, I'm Natalie and we're continuing our ViyarPro tutorial video series. Today we'll be taking a look at the countertop finishing constructor. We've got a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. On the ViyarPro Constructor's main page, we'll select the desktop finishing section. I've already picked out the desktop we'll be working with and copied its code. We'll add the product to the appropriate window and click the select button. Next, we'll choose the recommended edge and hit the get started button. Let's add a new part and set the length to 2050 mm. In the width window, we can see that the size is automatically set to 600 mm. Now we'll click the add button. The constructor warns us that the default adhesive for gluing is set to standard. If we want to change this, we need to select PR from the glue drop-down list to switch to PR gluing. I'll go ahead and add a few more parts of different sizes that we'll need for our work. Now let's move on to the finishing window. As we can see, here we can specify end processing, drilling, groove cutting, quarter cutting, corner processing, pattern cutout, as well as trimming to size. Let's process the ends of our part. We'll go into more detail about end processing. In this video, we'll apply our chosen edge to the left end, and for the right end, we'll specify an angled cut. The cut can be made at an angle ranging from -45 to 45 degrees. If we set a negative value, the cut will be made from the back of the part, while setting a positive value will cut from the front. Let's specify a cut angle of 45 degrees. We can also set the cut offset from 1 to 37 mm. Let's set it to 10 mm. After we've specified the cut offset value, we can add an edge by simply selecting it from this drop-down list. I want to draw your attention to the fact that only the offset will be edged. Edging is only available for either the offset or the 45 degrees cut, and only for thicknesses between 16 and 19 mm. We also see the end cutting option in the window. Countertops from the factory come with a so-called factory edge, which we can trim off. If we're planning to add, say, a radius with its edging or edge the end with a different edge, in the drop-down menu, we can choose to cut the edge from the top or trim the edge and increase the size by the thickness of the edge we're applying. Let's go with the first option. Looking at the visualization, we can see there's a rounded side at the bottom, which we could also trim if needed. We'll leave it as is and click the cut button. The red line on the visualization shows where we're cutting the factory edge. The number next to the red line indicates how much we've cut off. In our case, it's 2 mm. Now let's move on to drilling holes. We'll drill holes for the minifix. We select the backside. The hole type is for a minifix. We'll align it to the lower left edge. The coordinates are 50 mm for X and 80 mm for Y. Click the add button. The designer warns that due to material width variance, to ensure accurate hole placement, the part will be trimmed by 5 mm. Let's copy our hole by selecting it in the table and choosing Copy Vertically from the list of additional actions. Alright, now let's create a groove for the neon strip in our countertop. Click on the groove selection icon, choose the front side and select the under neon strip groove type. Now let's specify the direction. Choose horizontal and uncheck the entire length box. Set the length to 2000 mm and the radius to 5 mm. Snap it to the upper left edge with a Y coordinate of 50 mm. Use the centering button to set the X coordinate. Next, we have the quarter selection. We can set a custom quarter for the entire length of the part or place it with an offset. Let's keep the entire length checkbox activated and select the upper front edge from the drop-down list. Let's set the width to 20 mm and the depth to 15 mm. If needed, we can also check the box to close it with an edge, but for this option, the width value should be between 1 and 6 mm. Let's leave this setting as is and click the add button. To better understand how to work with quarter sampling and grooves, Watch our lesson on grooves and quarters. Let's move on to the next part and consider processing the corners. But first, let's trim off the factory edge. In the end processing window, set to cut the edge from the top. Now click on the corner processing icon, select the bottom left corner, choose radius processing type, set the radius value to 300 mm and add edge trimming. Click Add. Note the step that has formed. This step prevents peeling off the lamination on the radius rounding and allows applying the edge to the radius so that it holds, since there is no straight section to fix it. Let's also process the top left corner. The processing type is radius. The radius value is 200 mm. Select our edge and click the Add button. This processing is possible because we previously cut off the factory edge from the top. Otherwise, the constructor would have shown an error. Let's move on to the next part. Again, first we process the ends, specifying the height of the factory edge and the cut along the circumference. After that, let's click on the corner processing icon. From the list of corners, we'll select all of them. The processing type is radius. The value is 150 mm. We set the edge processing and the joint side as the top. Because we cut off the rounding from the bottom, we don't have the step that we looked at earlier. Just like with particle board, we can set the type of processing as an angle or an L-shaped cut. We'll discuss corner processing in more detail in this video. Let's move on to the next detail and figure out the template-based cutout processing type. In the corresponding lesson, we've already covered in detail how to make U-shaped and rectangular cuts, as well as the circles and arcs. So here, I suggest we look at template-based cutout types such as locks, socket cutouts, and tie bars. Let's start with the lock template. We'll choose the lock type, internal. As you can see, the width and margins are set to standard values by default. With the ability to change data, you can change the mount type, select L100 mount, and set its quantity to 2. The offset of the first mount is 100 mm, the second is 500 mm. Click the Add button. The cutout depth is 20 mm. It is crucial that the tabletop goes into the lock by 20 mm. Let's move on to the next detail and consider the outer type of lock. The mount type is L1. Pay attention to the warning at the bottom of the window. The designer warns us that the part enters the lock by 20 mm. This should be taken into account if it is necessary to increase the part by this size. The number of mounts is 2. The offset of the first mount is 100 mm. The second one is 500 mm. Click the Add button. Done. Let's move on to our next detail and add a cutout for the socket. Choosing a furniture socket template. Only one type of socket is available for the given material thickness. Just one. VersaCharger. The anchor is the upper left edge. The depth and rounding radius are automatically set. Choose the direction vertically. From soft to X is 70 and soft to Y will be set by clicking on the centering button. Add. Now we have a hole in the countertop for an outlet. The last type of template in this processing window is a screed. Milling under the screed is used to connect two pieces of the countertop together without a lock. From the list, we choose the L100 mounting type. The side is right and the anchor to the edge is the upper corner. The Y coordinate is 70. Done. As we've already mentioned, we can't change the width of our countertop. Let's figure out what to do if we still need a countertop measuring, for example, 1200 by 500 mm. Click on the small details icon. From the drop-down list of finishes, select Trim to Size. In the horizontal cut section, select the base edge as the bottom, specify our size as 500 mm for Y, click the Add button. The program warns us that all additional processing will be transferred to the smaller part. Click Yes, and it's done. In the visualization, we see a red cut line and a value of 100 which shows how many millimeters we've cut. We can also see that the width has become 500 mm. I also want to draw your attention to the functionality of importing machining details from an MPR file. This format is supported by furniture design software like AutoCAD and SolidWorks. If you need to import machining operations, Click on the icon on the left panel to add processing from an MPR file. I should mention that front and back machining operations are imported separately. I'll explain more about this type of import into the constructor in this video. Now you can easily work with the furniture designer. If anything remains unclear, feel free to leave your questions in the comments, give us a like and subscribe to our channel.